and welcome to this video. If you're anything like me, you've always wanted to see the cast of Grease go up against a giant monster. Well, until we get that movie, this one might just have to do. Cue title card. The Giant Gila Monster is a 1959 sci-fi film about a regular-sized town that's being terrorized by a giant lizard. Or alternatively, it's a sci-fi film about a miniature-sized town which is being terrorized by a regular-sized lizard. I am, of course, joking about that second option, but what I mean to say is that it's the kind of film with effects that could have been achieved by anyone with a pet lizard and a camcorder. Is this a negative thing? Certainly not. Does it fail to achieve what they set out to do? Well, that entirely depends on what they were trying to set out to do. It's definitely not horrifying, but it is rather cheesy and funny and has a very camp appeal. And I get the feeling that that was in fact the intention, because the overall vibe of the movie is definitely not one of a serious horror film. In fact, it more feels like they splice scenes from a B-grade horror film into an Elvis movie. Speaking of which, the main character, who is unfortunately not Elvis was in the military at the time, is pretty much your average poster child for a rockabilly. He works as a mechanic. In his spare time he works on and drives his hot rod and also goes to the drive-in cinema. Oh, and of course, he can holler a tune. But in addition to all of these traits, he's also carrying with him all of the tropes that would come to your regular main character in a sci-fi or horror film. So not only is he a mechanic, but he's also studying to become an engineer. Not only can he sing, but he also has a working knowledge of explosives. And not only does he drive a hot rod, but he's also the first one the police consult about the possibility of a giant lizard, for some reason. Is his character believable? God no, but neither is the story anyway, and it's just a lot of fun. So what is the story? Well, it's your average small town plagued by a monster kind of ordeal. So there are teenagers going missing, and at first people aren't sure if they're actually missing or if they've just run away. And then people start to report the existence of a giant lizard, but those people are often suspect, for instance drunk. And then lo and behold, it turns out that they were all right about it, and that there is in fact a giant lizard, and then they have to deal with a giant lizard. It's not exactly the most inventive or original storyline, but then again, most films in the horror genre are not. I mean, a crazy guy kills a lot of teenagers is basically your description of every single slasher film, but it's what lays within that vague description, the characters, effects, and cinematography that really sets these films apart. So what stands out in the effects? Well, nothing really, unfortunately. They did try to put the lizard in with miniatures, but most of the time, especially when it's out in the brush, it just looks like a lizard around a bunch of twigs, rather than what I assume they wanted to be, a giant lizard around a bunch of trees. And also the lizard and the people are never shown in the same shot together, instead with quick cuts used intended to establish their shared geographical location. This was not an unusual thing for B-grade horror and sci-fi films to do because, at the time, green screening was not as easy as hitting the chroma key button. For the most part, this trick looks really cheesy and cheap and fails to establish any real belief that the character and the effect are actually in the same place. I say in most part because the scene towards the end of the film where the lizard's attacking a party actually looks really good and was actually quite believable. To the film's credit, when writing this review, I actually had to go back and look at the scene again because I was unsure if the characters and the lizard had actually been green screened together or if the cuts in this section were just really well done. It turns out that the cuts were just really well done, but they were really well done. However, moving on to the characters, aside from the main character who I've already looked at, they are what really sets this movie apart from other B-grade monster movies, because they are instead, rather than your stereotypical B-grade monster movie characters, your stereotypical 1950s rockabilly hot rod style character. I'm not really sure what the genre is called, but if you've ever watched daytime television, chances are you've seen an old movie in the style. And supporting these characters, there's a B-grade plot outside of the horror genre elements of the movie about the lead singer trying to make it as a singer, and also engineer, a sick sister who needs help, dating life and whatnot which is unfortunately interrupted by a giant lizard, angry fathers, drag racing, and I guess whatever else teenagers got up to before the invention of YouTube. All of these elements by themselves would have made an okay but entirely forgettable rockabilly movie, and on the other side of the coin, all of the horror elements in this film would have made an okay but entirely forgettable sci-fi horror movie. However, in the same way that Ant-Man managed to combine what would have been a forgettable superhero movie with what would have been a forgettable heist movie to make a rather enjoyable film, these two elements in the Giant Gila Monster also combine very well and work to complement each other. It's not a fantastic movie, and it probably shouldn't even be considered as a good movie. However, if you're looking for a campy sci-fi horror movie that doesn't take itself too seriously, occasionally steps into the realm of so bad it's good, and has the main character singing in a song that'll literally get stuck in your head for 3 weeks, the Giant Gila Monster might just do the job. It's an
interesting mix of genres, and while I wouldn't rush out to watch it again, and probably will never bother to watch it again, while I was watching I did not get bored and enjoyed just switching my mind off and enjoying it, which is sometimes all you need.
Thanks for watching, and as always, until next time, I have been and still am Grim Grindle.